There was a man standing in my parking lot at 2 in the morning, and he had not moved in 40 minutes. I watched him on the camera first. Gray sedan, out-of-state plates, parked crooked across 2 spaces, the way people park when they have stopped caring about small things. He got out. He stood by the driver's door with his hand still on it, like he was about to get back in. And then he just stayed there in the cold, looking at the row of doors. I have worked a motel night desk long enough to know the 4 or 5 kinds of people who show up at that hour. He was none of them. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't lost. He wasn't leaving somebody. He was looking at one door, and I knew which door before I checked the camera again, because I had been looking at that same door every night for 6 years. He came inside at 2:40. The bell over the office door rang. He was maybe 60, gray at the temples, in a coat far too good for that parking lot, and his hands were shaking so badly that he had to lay them flat on the counter to make them stop. He said, "I'd like room 118. I need you to understand what that sentence did to me. In 6 years behind that desk, I had turned people away from that room more times than I could count. Holiday weekends, ice storms, a bus that broke down on the highway and put 40 people in my lobby at midnight, and me standing there with one key I would not hand over. I told every one of them the same lie. Maintenance. Water damage. I said it so many times I had almost started to believe it myself. Because room 118 was not broken. Room 118 was paid for, every single month, by a man I had never met, who had never once come to sleep in it. Until that night. I'm Marcus. I ran the overnight desk at the Blue Heron Motel, 22 rooms in a long, low L off a state highway, the kind of place with a pool that hadn't held water since before I started, and a sign where the letter B flickered. I took that job at 39 because I needed something with no people in it, and 11 at night to 7 in the morning is the closest thing to that you can get while still being employed. I did 400 and something nights a year of nothing happening, and I was fine with it. I want to be honest about that. I wasn't a man with a rich life who stumbled onto a mystery. I was a man with an empty life, and the mystery was the only furniture in it. Here is how the arrangement worked, and I only learned it in pieces. My first week, the owner, a man named Ray who came in twice a month to look at numbers and complain about them, walked me down the row and pointed at 118 and said, "That one's not in the system. Don't rent it. Don't think about it." I said, "Is it flooded?" He said, "It's paid," and kept walking, and that was the whole conversation. Ray was not a curious man. Ray was a man who cashed things. The money came by mail. A money order, every month, arriving somewhere between the 2nd and the 5th, drawn on a bank in a town about 200 miles east of us. $340. Which was our monthly rate for a room in the off-season, and no note and no name, just a post office box on the return line. Ray deposited it and never asked a question in his life about it, because it was the only guaranteed money the Blue Heron made, and he was not going to poke it. The one time the rate went up, we raised our monthly to $380. The next money order that came was $380. Nobody had told him. He had called and asked, or he had checked online, or he had driven past and read the sign. Whichever it was, it meant something I could not stop thinking about once I thought it. Whoever this was, he was still paying attention. This was not a forgotten automatic payment bleeding out of some dead man's account. Somebody was awake out there, 600 miles of nights away, keeping this exactly current. And there was a card, typed, not handwritten, laminated, taped inside the door of the linen closet by whoever had the job before me. It said, "Room 118 is not to be rented. Change the linens on the 1st of the month. Do not remove anything from the closet." I did that. For 6 years, on the 1st of every month, at about 3 in the morning when there was nothing to do, I let myself into a room nobody slept in and changed sheets nobody had touched, and I remade a bed for a guest who never came. You would think that gets old. It did not. It got worse. Let me tell you what room 118 was like, because it is not what you are imagining. It was clean. Not a shrine, not sealed up, not creepy. A perfectly ordinary motel room with 2 queen beds and a landscape painting screwed to the wall, and a coffee maker with the little sealed packets still in the drawer. If I had put a family in there, they would have thought nothing at all. There were only 2 things about it that were not ordinary. The first was that it smelled like nothing. Every other room in that motel smelled like something. Smoke that predated the no smoking signs, chlorine, carpet shampoo, the ghost of somebody's perfume. 118 had 6 years of no one in it, and it smelled like clean linen and dust, and standing in it at 3 in the morning felt like standing inside a held breath. The second thing was the closet. Do not remove anything from the closet, the card said, and for a long time I assumed that meant something was in there. A suitcase, a box, papers. There wasn't. The closet was empty. 6 wire hangers on a rail, an ironing board, a spare pillow in a plastic sleeve. Nothing. It took me almost a year to find it, and I only found it because I dropped a light bulb and knelt down. On the inside of the closet door, low, at about the height of a kid's shoulder, somebody had run a strip of masking tape vertically up the wood, and on the tape there were pencil marks. 4 of them. Little careful lines with a date written beside each one in small handwriting, 1 year apart, 4 years running. The first one was low enough that whoever it was had been small, really small. The 4th one was about here on me, at my ribs. And then the tape just stopped, with a lot of room left above the last mark, the way tape does when nobody ever comes back to use the rest of it. I sat down on the floor of that closet, and I stayed there a while, because a strip of tape on a closet door in a motel room means one thing and one thing only. It means a family came back. Not once. Every year on purpose, to the same 22-room motel off a state highway, and every year they measured their kid against the same door, and it was a joke or a tradition or just a thing they did, and somebody thought it was worth the trouble of finding a pencil. And then one year it stopped, and somebody started sending $340 a month to a man named Ray who did not care, to keep a stranger from painting over it. I am not proud of the next part. I want to say that up front. I became a person who looked into it. Slowly over years, the way you pick at something. Ray kept the old registration cards in a filing cabinet in the back office, because Ray never threw anything away that could theoretically be shown to an accountant. Boxes of them, going back to the 80s in no order at all. I went through them on night shifts. Not obsessively. An hour here, a hollow week there, whenever the desk was dead. It took me most of 2 years, on and off, to find the 4 cards for room 118 with the same name on them. 1 year apart, 4 years running. Her name was Elena. 2 adults on the first 3 cards. 2 adults and 1 child on all 4. And on the last card, The one dated the year the pencil mark stopped. There was only one adult and the child. There was a phone number on all four. I called it from the desk phone at 4 in the morning like an idiot, and it was disconnected and had been for a long time. So I typed her name into a search bar, which is the thing I had been avoiding for 2 years, without admitting to myself that I was avoiding it. It took 11 seconds. She had died on the highway 2 miles east of the motel at 11:48 at night, on the last date on that registration card. Her daughter was in the car. Her daughter was 9. I read that on a night in February with the heater ticking behind me and no cars on the road. And then I went and stood in the parking lot for a long time in my coat. 2 miles east. I had driven past the place 10,000 times. There is a curve there with a metal barrier that has been replaced at least once since I started, and I had never once wondered why. The rest of it I put together over the following year in pieces, from a newspaper archive, and from what the man told me himself later, and I am going to give it to you in one piece even though I did not get it that way. They came every summer, the 3 of them, on the drive to the coast. The Blue Heron was the halfway point, and it was cheap, and their kid loved it because a kid does not know that a motel is not a destination. The tape on the closet door was her idea. She wanted to be measured every year in the same place, so she could see the whole thing at once. That last summer, the father could not drive out with them. Work. He was going to come out the following day and meet them at the motel, and they would all go on to the coast together. So it was the 2 of them that year, and that is why the last card says 1 adult and 1 child. He called that evening to say he was leaving late. Then he called again to say he wasn't going to make it that night at all. She had already checked in. The pencil mark for that year is on the door, and it is dated that day. So the last thing that happened in that room was that a mother measured her daughter against a closet door and wrote the date next to it. And then, at about 11:30 at night, for reasons no one alive gets to know, she put their bags back in the car and decided to drive on and meet him instead of waiting. 11:48. 2 miles east. He kept the room. That is the whole thing. He kept the room, because the room was the appointment he did not keep. Every month for 6 years, he sent money to a motel he had never slept in, to hold open a reservation that had already been missed, and I was the man who changed the sheets on it. Now I can tell you about the night he came. He stood in my lobby with his hands flat on the counter, and he asked for room 118. And I did not ask him a single question, because I had been rehearsing questions for 6 years, and every one of them died in my mouth. I just took the key off the board. It was the only key on that board that had never been on a hook with a tag. I said, "It's made up. It's always made up." And he looked at me then, really looked, and something happened in his face when he understood that the sheets on that bed had been changed 12 times a year by a person standing right in front of him. He said, "Thank you." That was all. He said it twice. He was in there 4 hours. I did not watch the camera. I want credit for that, because I wanted to badly, and I did not. I sat at the desk, and I did the deposit twice, and I listened to the ice machine. At 6:45, just before my shift ended, he came out and put the key on the counter and slid an envelope across to me. Inside was a letter for Ray saying the arrangement was ending and the payments would stop, and a note thanking us, and $800 in cash that he had clearly had ready for months. I asked him the only thing I ever asked him. I asked why now. Why that night? He said she would have turned 16 that day. 16. The age you get a license. The age you get keys of your own and drive off into the exact thing that took her. He did not say that part. He did not have to. He stood there while I did that arithmetic on my face, and then he picked up his coat. At the door he stopped and said one more thing, and it is the reason I am telling any of this. He said, "Don't paint the closet." Then he drove east, which was the direction of the curve, and I stood in the doorway of the office and watched his taillights until they weren't there. Room 118 went back into the system 11 days later. Ray was delighted. I rented it out myself the first time, to a family with 2 kids and a dog they had not disclosed, and I stood behind that desk and handed over the key and felt something come loose in my chest that has never entirely gone back. But here is the part I actually think about. The Blue Heron got repainted the next spring. New owner, new colors. The whole place done over in 2 weeks by a crew of guys with a compressor. Every room, every closet. I took the strip of masking tape off before they got there, and I taped it back up after, in the same place, lined up on the same screw hole in the hinge plate. It is on the inside of a closet door in a motel room off a state highway that 100 strangers a year hang their coats in, and not one of them has ever looked down, and it is still there. I stopped working nights about a year after that. I want to tell you it was because of him, and it partly was. But mostly it was because of the arithmetic I did standing at that desk at 6:45 in the morning, when a man told me his daughter would have been 16, and I realized that I had a daughter too, and that I had not spoken to her in 9 years, and that in my head I had been calling that a delay. That is what I had never understood about room 118, even after 6 years of making the bed in it. I thought that man was grieving. He wasn't, or not only. He was late. He had been late one single night in his entire life, and he had spent 6 years paying to hold that night open, in case there was a version of it where he arrived. I had done the same thing without spending $1. My daughter was not dead. She was 4 hours away with a phone number I knew by heart, and I had been keeping the room empty anyway, telling myself I would call when I had something better to say, waiting for a good version of the conversation to show up, changing the sheets on it every month in my head. I called her from the parking lot of that motel on a Tuesday, at 7:15 in the morning, still in my work jacket. She did not pick up. I left a message, and it was a bad message, and I said the wrong things in the wrong order. She called back that night. "We are not fixed. I want to be careful here, because I have heard a lot of stories that end with everybody hugging, and this is not that. We talk maybe once a month. There are whole subjects we go around. She has a life I know the shape of but not the inside of, and I earned that, and I am not owed more than I have. But it is not empty. That is the entire difference, and I did not know it was that big until I had it. So that is the story of the room I kept for a stranger, and what it cost me to figure out that I had one of my own. If you are keeping something open right now, and you know exactly what it is, because you thought of it about 4 minutes ago, and you have been half listening to me ever since, that is the whole reason I told you this. Don't wait for the good version. He was 1 night late. 6 years, $340 a month, and a pencil mark on a strip of tape that never got used past the 4th line. 1 night.